Welcome to the presentation by Rich Rogers. He's a coach in Florida who is going to talk about periodization and the science of structuring a successful season. He'll also be talking about the super sport systems as a software package.
Hi, guys, everybody. Happy New Year. I hope you're all doing well. Sorry to hear about any terrible weather and situations. Thoughts and prayers go out to everyone that's affected. Well, I'd love to start out by saying that sharing what you know is a privilege, and I appreciate the opportunity to do this. And anything that I can do to help in the future, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information will be there. If I need to explain anything to you on a personal level, I'm always available to do that as well. Basically, what we're going to talk about today is not just classical periodization, but more the application of how do you take the science of swimming and put it into play on an everyday basis, and making sure that we take a look at the tools and situations that we can utilize to make that happen. The science of a successful season. Okay, how modern periodization turns planning into performance. Basically, what we're going to talk about today is how do you take a swimmer from point A and get them to point B? And what are some of the tools that you can utilize to make sure that we do that? So we're looking at the principles of biological adaptation and season design. Now, I'm not going to read through everything step by step because I know that you have relative intelligence and you guys can take a look at this as well. But we have to make sure that when we're doing this, that we have priority and sequencing involved. A lot of times when people are dealing with seasonal design, they're kind of taking some test sets or what they did last year and trying to make sure that they use that information. And basically, modern periodization looks at the body, where it is, where we're trying to go, and then creates a pathway to go from that point A to point B. And we'll be looking at some of the ways that we can do that. One of the other things that's really important when you're talking about this is how do you describe energy zones and how do you make sure that everybody is on the same page? A lot of times when I speak with coaches or if I speak with individual swimmers, the coach may say A, the swimmer interprets it as B, the coach sees C, and then they both describe it as D at the end. So making sure that you're very precise in the definition of what your energy zone is and what are the parameters for you to utilize those energy zones in terms of length of time, duration, intensity. Those are all crucial factors in making sure that you're not having a guesswork from going to your daily planning to the end of the season. So defining those energy zones and making sure that everybody's on the same page is a crucial part of what you're going to be doing in an effective seasonal design. When you're looking at the progression as well, you're really looking at that start of the season through that targeted championship meet. And what you're trying to do then is create basically a pathway for each one of the energy zones on when do you hit those energy zones at what level, and how do you take that distribution curve over the course of the season so you're maximizing the return on the effort that you put in. So if you think about it, the way that I like to talk to my swimmers when I'm doing this is basically if we use the 5 Russian energy zone system, and there's subzones inside there. So you have 9 of them. So basically, in a very simplistic way, if the body has 9 gas tanks that you have to fill up from the beginning of the season to the end, at what point in time do you fill up each one of those individual gas tanks to make sure that at the end of the season you have everything that you need and all the fuel that you need inside of your body from a physiological standpoint to give yourself the best opportunity for success? So that is the overall big arc, as I have it over here, or the bird's eye view of how you're looking at your season to make sure that you have the progression in the right sense. And again, what we're looking at there is once we have this whole season taking from point A to point B and then all the way to Z at the end, how do you break that up from a load distribution standpoint per week? And when you're doing that, you also then have to take a look at the days of the week and how each one of these energy zones interacts with another one. Sometimes energy zones can bleed into each other. So taking a really focused look at how do you make day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, and how do you load each one of those energy zones so you get the maximum amount of adaptation and also the maximum rest that you need for the following day for that adaptation to occur. So even if you take a look at this 1 week cycle that we have right here, each one of those different colors, really we're looking at a different energy zone and a different load for that specific day. And you can notice from this is, I believe, like a week 9 in the middle of a 16-week season. There's basically a microcycle for 3 days. You can see that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday are similar to Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So that gives you the opportunity to have the load that you need for each one of those energy zones without bleeding in the next day into the same energy zone and not giving that other system or that gas tank basically the opportunity to rest and grow. One of the other things that's really important is utilizing parametric training within each one of the seasons. Parametric training is very adaptable. It's something that is a concept that the swimmers really can appreciate. And it gives you basically the opportunity to increase adaptation by changing one parameter over time. So for example, if we're looking at, we want to increase basic endurance, and we're looking at starting at week 1 of a parametric set that might last for 8 weeks, starting out with 6 100s on 130. And then by the end of the process, we might be going to 16 100s. Basically, what we're trying to do is increase the number of repetitions that we can do, holding the same time or better with about the same rest. So that way the capacity then changes. And over that period of time, that one parameter has helped mold the athlete into a more efficient swimmer. A lot of this also comes down to how do we take all this stuff? How do we take the seasonal plan? How do we take the weekly load? How do we take the daily load? And how do we make sure that we put all these things into play? So this is just a basic snapshot of something that we do. And we're going to go into the application of how these things work in a moment. But I just wanted to give you a brief overview of where we are. One thing that I love about a scientific approach to seasonal training design is that it really helps create a culture and really helps create personal responsibility about what you're trying to do. If you design your season where energy zones have specific times that the swimmer has to hold over a course of a week, and then those times change as the progression curve changes over the course of time, it gives them that target that they need where every set becomes a test set. So you're not dealing with just a simple test set and then swimmers doing whatever they want to do. Every time they push off the wall becomes a test set because they're trying to hold that prescribed time. And over time, when they buy into this type of a concept, they understand the efficiency and the value of everything that they do when they push off the wall. So this is not just an educational component for the swim coaches to understand all these different levels. It's a communication tool for you to deal with your athletes and tell them, look, we're not just going to get in here and swim hard. And we all appreciate when swimmers swim hard, but we're going to swim strategically. We're going to understand what we're doing each time we push off the wall. And we're going to then focus in on what you individually have to do to make sure that you have that accountability and you have success at this end of the season. Okay. I'm going to go through this. I threw a bunch of stuff out there. I would love for you to see how the season is structured, how we do this, but also I just want you to realize that too many times in our environments as coaches, we have lost the ability to help every individual within a group because it's very, very difficult to have targeted times for everyone. It's hard to have targeted times for everyone when you're dealing with individuals. So what this system does, it allows you to set up group structures and then have times for everyone in the group itself. Okay, what I described was a big overview of a system that was developed by Dr. Sergey Belev of Super Sports Systems. I had the pleasure of meeting with him in the early 2000s when he was here and had the accumulated knowledge of the former Soviet Union. in terms of their training process, their training optimization process. And over the course of a couple of decades, he's refined what he's done and how he does it and how he offers it to coaches. It's a system that is really designed to help coaches give super specific workouts for individuals in groups and individuals within groups over time. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of how this works, show you how powerful it is. And I have no financial stake in any of this. I just want to make sure that people understand that there is a tool out there that can help you go from where you want to be to where you want to go just by following some simple guidance, and know that the science behind it is real. Right here, right now, I just set up one swimmer, and this swimmer basically just finished in the short course yards at 2:02:39 for his 200 breaststroke. And he's 15 years of age. We're going to target a result at the ISCA Senior Cup, just under 2 minutes, which is a 1.96 progression rate over the course of 13 weeks. So basically, he's dropped an amazing amount of time. For example, in the 200 breaststroke, let's say he's gone from 210 to 202 in a season. And so these types of progression rates are not unusual when you're dealing with the 3S suite of tools. So right now, what I'm going to do is go to the season setting. You can see that I put in his information, where we are, where we want to be. I can go into the second profile and put in his exact times that we're going to need. And then if I go into the seasonal planning tool, what this does is it says, okay, if you're starting your season on 12/15 and we're going to end it at the ISCA Senior Cup in March, these are the weeks that we're going to go, and it breaks it up into the 4 phases that 3S utilizes. You have the pull-in phase, the accumulation phase, the realization phase, and the taper phase. This big black line right here basically shows you the accumulated yardage that you're going to have over the course of each one of these weeks. This is yardage, this is time. So we're starting out with a low amount of yardage, we're pulling in, and then we're building up during the accumulation phase. The realization phase, it goes down because intensity goes up, rest goes up, and then we have our taper at the end. And this is not warm up, warm down, or recovery. And these are the individual energy zones underneath. And you can see how during the course of the season, each one of the energy zones is targeted at a different amount at a different time. So what you're getting here is based on a progression curve of where the season starts, where you want them to be. You can see right here around week number 8, he'd be at his season best time, and then going through on the progression curve. This progression curve also allows us to determine what percentage of speed the athlete will be doing for each one of the energy zones over the course of that week. So the times and the paces for your energy zone prescriptions change over time dynamically with the progression curve for that athlete for that particular season. And all this is done behind the scenes. It's important to know what it does, but even if you're not sure how this works, it does this for you. Now, you can adjust the training strategy from sprint, mid-distance, distance. If you are really experienced with how you want to move these, you can actually go ahead and edit what we're doing. Let's just say for this particular athlete, I know that I want to do 9% of zone 3. I can save that. Everything will get dynamically adjusted. It'll take away from the 1B. And just so we're all clear, 1B is the smoothest of the energy zones, and 5A is the fastest of the energy zones. And if I go back over here now, we can take a look at those zones a little more clearly than in that presentation. This is basically the definition of each one of these energy zones. And this is a zone description. This is the time limits of each of those in terms of work. And you can see that in each one of them, they change. This is important because when a lot of times when coaches are designing sets, they design the sets sometimes outside of the energy zones parameters. And that makes a difference because if you're going, let's say, 20 minutes of work and you think you're doing 1B, the body really can't sustain that over time, and you're really going into zone 2. So it's important when you're designing these sets that you have these time limits in mind, understanding what it is. A 3S will take your workout. It will give you the time that you need to hold in order to stay within that energy zone for that specific stroke, for that specific week. So all these things get taken into account. It gives the athletes basically a targeted for each one, a targeted set and what they would really like to do for each time they push off the wall for every set. Let's going back to the season right here in planning. So we have this season right now, and for this particular athlete, he's in week number 3, just starting the accumulation phase. So what we're going to do is look at the week density. How does 3S and how would a coach take these specific numbers and break them up throughout the course of the week? So I'm going to go in here into the weekly density. So as you can tell, we're in week number 3, and there's not that much diversity of energy zones, because if I go back to week 2, for example, you're going to see it's all 1A and 1B. So we're just doing a pull in. We're getting the season done. We just had winter juniors, took a transition week, getting back in the water, and we're trying to create that aerobic base. One of the things that I've spoken to coaches about that's really difficult is holding the swimmers back. A lot of times they've just finished a successful meet. They're pumped. They want to go. And it's not the time to jump into those higher energy zones. If they go into those higher energy zones too early, let's just say your body has the ability to go 8 weeks or so at that type of intensity. If you do it too soon, you're going to lose that aerobic base, and you might get some good mid-season results, but then you're going to have fatigue, a little bit of overtraining at the end, and the swimmer will be flat. So it's important to take a look at where you are in the season and make sure that you adjust that. And one of the ways that I challenge the athletes when we're in these 2 or 3 weeks where it's a lot of 1A and 1B is this is a point in time where you're thinking about distance per stroke. You're thinking about not breathing in and out of the walls. You're thinking about your underwaters. You're slowing things down. You're really focusing in on the technique, making sure that they can hold these times with perfect technique. So that way, as the season progresses and the energy zones get more intense, they're holding the technique that they garnered through the early seasons when the higher energy zones hits. So we took a look at week number 3, and you'll see that's when we introduced parametric as well. So for this particular athlete, the parametric set is starting out at 6 100s. And there's also another parametric set for 4 200s on Saturday. Let's go to week number 9. So week 9 is pretty intense. All right, so you can see that we're already up to 13 100s and 9 200s. You can also see that we're dealing with zone 2, zone 5, zone 3 on different days, and the intensity level is absolutely high. This is when the art of coaching comes into place. How do you prescribe sets for these different athletes to make sure that they have the ability to sustain the times that they're supposed to do, and you're presenting in such a fashion that they can intellectually and physically handle it? If I go into workouts, there is a workout generator inside of 3S, but what I try to do is create my own. And in doing that, I go into expert mode. And just for example, if I wanted to just show you how this works in terms of prescription. All right, so we are in week number 9. We're looking at an athlete. We're going to pretend that he warms up. I'm going to go in here, and let's say we're going to do a set in aerobic power. And we are going to do, say, 2450s. And let's do it breaststroke. Oh, that'd be horrible. We'll keep with freestyle. 15 seconds rest, and we're going to apply this. So what we're looking at here, okay, is the time that he needs to hold is 23.87, getting about 15 seconds rest. Okay, this is the zone that he's going into, zone 3A, excuse me, for freestyle. This time is relevant to week number 9 inside of this season that we set up. And if we go to a different week, we're going to get a different time based on the progression curve. What this does, it allows you as a coach to prescribe exact, pinpoint, accurate send-off keep times for each one of your athletes. Now, the thing that I haven't shown, because this is an individual athlete, is inside this program, you can also set up groups. So if this gentleman had 7 other people in his training group that were similar, that were going for the same type of event, then we could put them in, put their best times. And then if I go ahead and I do 2450s, one might be 2387, one might be 242, one might be 244. And each person gets an individualized time based on their specific needs for that day or in that week inside of that season. So the power of doing this on a global scale for your athletes and giving them the individualized attention that they need to get their times is amazing. What this does in terms of communication, in terms of education, in terms of culture, in terms of responsibility is amazing. And once you get buy-in from the swimmers, from the parents, from the coaching staff, and everybody understands that, I call it the 11th commandment, know thy time, hold thy time. And by doing that, you're going to see amazing results at the end of the season. I've been fortunate to utilize this with many athletes, and there's so many times where I can say the goal time that we've had has been within tenths or even less than what we put in at the beginning of the season. How you put in a goal time at the end is also very important. You cannot just take somebody and say, hey, you go 25, we're going to have you go 19. You have to obviously know what the progression rate is for that athlete, where they are in terms of their technical expertise and more. And basically, you have the framework that you need from a seasonal standpoint, from a weekly load standpoint, to a daily standpoint, to a set standpoint, to an individualized send-off standpoint, to give the precise prescriptions for what each athlete needs for every set, every day, to make sure that they have the opportunity to get to the promised land at the end of the season. So I'd love to open it up to anybody that has questions about how this works, how to utilize it in a program, or questions specifically about seasonal design in general.
So test sets are, important. They're not just some ornaments you hang out on a Christmas tree, right? You give me a little more of the framework for your favorite test sets and how they integrate into your season.
Well, there is a test set module inside of 3S, and you can go ahead and do that. But to be completely frank, I think I said it earlier, every set is a test set. And what's great about this system is that from day 1, set 1, to the last day prior, you have an absolute arc and a pinpoint accuracy of what you need to do. So you're holding that. A lot of times what people do when they're designing seasons, let's just say they do a T30 or a T40 or, a test set, and they're trying to then say, okay, we're going to use this information to see where we want to be in the future. So basically you're taking the present state and you're then trying to make the future out of it. What this does is it starts at the end and says, okay, I want to go 159.9. What do I have to hold physiologically to start myself from 202 to 159? And each one of these sets then becomes, in essence, a test set. So you're not just saying, okay, I'm going to predict based on a test. I've already done the prediction. It's 159.9. Now I've back-ended it, and each one of these is going to be the stepping stone to get me from A to Z.
Okay, then how many events do you strategize about? When your swimmer goes to the Senior Cup, and that's awesome to be mentioning that, they're going to be doing more than just the 200 breast. So
absolutely.
How do you stage those other events within the structure?
Okay, so what I try to do for all my swimmers that are 14 and under is everybody's a distance swimmer and everybody's a 400 IMer. And basically what I'm doing at that point is I'm increasing their aerobic capacity from a young age, making sure that they're equally adept to their physical ability at every stroke, and we're focusing in on the IM, and then the other strokes fall into place. As somebody becomes more adept and they become a senior, I'm looking at, one or two events, but I might be focusing more on the 200 breaststroke. But during the course of the season, I'm also adding in sets that incorporate everything. So it's not like I'm writing a set that's everything is freestyle, breaststroke. It's going to be a complete ratio of what I'm going to need. And basically for this swimmer, who's also a 400 IMer, what a surprise, because now he's 15 and he's coming out of that model that we just did. Actually, he dropped significantly. I think he went 356 in his 400 IM Winter Juniors as a 15-year-old. And really what you're looking at is, okay, if you're a mid-distance person and you're training in this set, you might not be the 50 guy that you would have been had we set up the season to have a different ratio of zone 4, 5, and 3 versus zones 1, 2, and 3. So you really can't have 12 masters as you get older in the sport. You have to look at the body as what it is. A 8-cylinder BMW is going to run differently than a Prius.
Give us a little more context about the team. Who's in the water for you these days? How's your program structured? You share if you want to, on the type of kid or, your community.
Sure.
We'd love to get some understanding of what's going on in Florida with you these days.
Okay, these days the team is 2.5 years old, and it basically started from scratch at Florida Atlantic University. And we had a few kids that came in. I came down a couple of months after they put all the paperwork together and got it squared away. It was culture shock for a lot of the kids that started because they weren't used to this type of environment. We have since attracted the tribe of people that are into this type of scientific, education-based, non-yelling, focused people. And basically we have kids that are, I've had 8 and 9-year-olds that are going 28, 29 and a 50 free, all the way through to postgrads now. So with the college environment being in South Florida, we are attracting some people that come down post-college to train. So it's really a diverse group of people, but I think the common thread that we have here, and that's been in a lot of the groups that I've had over the years, is that it is people that want the knowledge and want to know the why. I think that's the culture. Why are we doing this? Okay, here's why we're doing this. It's not shut up and swim. It's not just get in and go, make the set and go. So the culture, the people that we have, whether they're 9 or 29, is that of, what do I have to do to get to my goals? How is this working for me today? So tomorrow I'm one step further. So it's a lot of fun dealing with kids like that and parents like that get it. So really having the ability to start a team from scratch is a lot easier in many circumstances than taking over something that has a culture for you to overcome. So we set the bar high right from the beginning. I think ASCA had us at number 19 this past year for small teams age group ranking in the USA, which isn't bad for 2 years. It really is a function of education, training, purpose, and focus. And not to say that these kids come in and they're little robots that are ready to hold the pace. We have the same troubles and situations that everything has, but the overall arc is each day, how are we getting closer and closer to that perfection, and how are we getting closer and closer? So building that down here in Florida has been a lot of fun.
Then what about the connection with the college? You have a club team, but how's the college thing working out? What's it like?
The college team is independent from what we do, but we're bleeding in. I think there's a lot of influence now on what they see is happening in the club ranks with the college coaches, and they're taking some of the principles that we're using and putting them in there. Also, I believe that when the kids are done in March, April, they now are staying and training with the club for the summer. We're seeing a lot more of that. This has been the pattern that I've seen throughout my entire career, and you've all probably seen this. Let's just say that you start a program and you have one or two kids that say, hey, I'm going to come to the morning workout. And then at the end of the season, you have those kids do great. Then you have 4 or 5 because everybody's like, hey, what did they do? Same thing's now happening with the college ranks, I think, is that, instead of just going home for the summer, the people that are staying are doing well. And now we're getting more and more of that. So I think the blend between the club and the college is going to get larger. And then as these college swimmers graduate, it's not a bad place to do your postgraduate training down in, sunny South Florida. So they have connections to the area and they can stay. So I see where we are as not just a age group place for the locals, but I also see it as a potential post-grad center of excellence moving forward. We have a 50-meter outdoor pool with an attached diving well, 25-yard pool as well. One of the things that we're fortunate to have are a lot of the things that you need. I was fortunate to learn a lot about the pulleys from Randy Reese on my time at Clearwater. And those are integral to what we do as well for in-water strength and training for what we do to supplement what we do in the water. So we have 7 power towers, so everything that you need is right there. I mean, you're no worries about the weather. It's beautiful basically year round. It does get hot in the summer and rainy, but for the most part, what we're looking at is a pretty good intense place to be.
You mentioned, and I love that the communication pathway, it gives you a lot of chapters to talk about with the athletes, this scientific foundation. So now, what about how do you communicate with the kids in the program and the parents and their guardians and internally and with other coaches? Is it with texting or is it with email, or do you just keep it all one-to-one on in person on deck? So how does some of those other just nuts and bolts communications happen?
Okay, we did not set this up. Okay, guys, this is not a setup. It's really important that you communicate with the parents. And one of the things that I think is so crucial is that you communicate in the ways that they do it. Like back in the older days, it was parent meetings one-on-one. Then back in the 90s, the early 2000s, your website was your basic generator, and then you had emails and everything else. Now you have, WhatsApp, and there's so many different ways to communicate. I personally like the one-on-one approach, but also the one-to-many approach is important with all those types of communications. I am launching swimparentacademy.com. And the reason I'm doing this is that I think I mentioned to somebody earlier is that people get onto these chat GPTs and they try to learn everything. So what I'm trying to do for my own families and what I hope to do for other families as well is get a knowledge base of all the different things that you need from a mental training standpoint, from a nutrition standpoint, from how do you approach race day, and what are the different things that you do, not technical, not training or anything else, but how do you help the parents learn what they need to do to effectively support the swimmers? So to circle back to where I was at the beginning, I think people now, they use this. And if the app is what I've created is going to help the parents say, okay, I'm gonna ask ChatGPT, but really it's rich GPT because the knowledge base is in there. They're not then going to get generic internet advice. They're going to be able to get the knowledge base that I've put in there and then talk to me as well. So I think in 2026, it's important, again, to meet them where they are. And for me, it's creating that app. So they have access to my knowledge base 24/7 in addition to me as well. So it's not just an article on the website anymore. It's an app on their phone that they can utilize. So I think that's the next generation of parent communication, and going to be launching it in the next day. So thank you for that question.
Well, after the seminar, let's go under the hood, you and I. And
okay.
I would love to be able to share some of our ISCA resources and promotional opportunities, and because we've been working on some of those higher level communication things as well. And that would be phenomenal. Okay, then my last question is Matt from Tennessee. Yes. You've been collaborating with him. He's going to be if into the ISCA Hall of Fame in the future. So
Great.
could you give me a story or background on your long-term relationship with him? And
Sure. The thing that I think everybody who knows Matt knows is that he's a thinker. And what I think drew him originally to what Sergey was providing, it also drew me into that, was the ability to be precise. Fortunately, my oldest stepdaughter also was swimming at Tennessee. And a funny story with that was he wasn't at Tennessee at the time. And he was, a spider. And, I was talking to her, I'm like, look, you might want to go swim with this guy, Matt Kredich, because he's very much in line with what I am. And I think one of the key elements for people to go from their club to their college is creating that marriage with the right coach. And a lot of times, if you come from a program like mine and then you go to somebody who's a different way, it might not be a great marriage, or vice versa. I mean, there's people that come to me and there's parents that are like, hey, you're not mean enough to be successful. And I'm like, okay, we're not the right fit. But I was encouraging her to really consider, going to Richmond, I believe. And it didn't. She fell in love with Tennessee, and it was great. And she went there, and then the coach retired, and they got Matt in there, and they had a great relationship. But the thing that always impresses me about Matt is that he's always learning. He's not stagnant in where he is, and I think that's what separates good coaches from great coaches. Is yeah, I have all this, but the minute I stop learning, like Matt, the minute I stop trying new things, the minute that I stop, I think that's when you die and you're stagnant. So the biggest thing that I have with Matt in my mind is his absolute ability to learn, synthesize material, and then create ways in which he can take that material to his athletes and translate it into success in the pool. I love watching his athletes swim and watching him do what he does.
Most of the great swimmers like um, Hosoke Kitajima, Michael Phelps, and others, the superstars of their country, are doing personalized coaching. Okay, uh, most of the the coaches, which is um, aiming, normally it's about 3 to 4 swimmers for the elites. Um, Now, for the sake of the new ones, okay, here, and which is not yet on the level of elite coaching, okay, coach, is it possible for you to uh, give a bird's or simple explanation? What is the difference between the elite level, cream of the crop, to the junior or national team? Because why is it that they're focusing on a personalized coaching basis? Yes, coach.
So that's a great question. And one of the things that I was trying to allude to when I was doing the presentation is that too many times swim programs, let's just say you have 1 or 2 really good swimmers and you have 32 kids in the pool. Okay. How do you create a structure that addresses the needs of all 32 swimmers, not just the 1 or 2? It's relatively easy, and it's not. But what I'm saying is if you can focus on 1 or 2 athletes, great. But when you have 32 kids in a pool and you're a young coach and you're in charge of doing all this, how do you do that? That's where a tool like 3S comes in, because you put all 32 swimmers in, you create the season that you're going to go from point A to point Z, and then you get the times that all 32 need to hold. Break them up into their lanes, what they need to do, and what I do is then on the lane sheet, I have all the different times that each one of the swimmers needs to hold. And then I have a master copy of that. And I can see from a bird's eye view throughout the course of the swims if they're holding their times or not. There's also wearables that you can do that can track that as well. There's so many ways in 2026 that we can make sure that the swimmers are doing that. But you can't do that on a personalized basis in a large group if you don't know what everybody needs to hold. That is why it's important to set up the season for each one of the individuals to get that personalized attention that they need. And I implore, especially younger coaches that are dealing with multiple athletes, to really sit back and say, how am I going to add the personalized environment for every child or every swimmer or every athlete that I have the privilege to work with all season long? And think about a tool like this or some other tools that allows them to have their own personal workouts. Because you're right. If you're dealing with 2 or 3 kids, coach, and then you have all these other ones, how do you create that environment for them?
The In the national team, there are expectations. Uh, so if you are handling elite level, um, you're trying to compute 2 hours is 120 minutes of attention. The 120 minutes of attention covering 3 swimmers or 4 swimmers is already too much. Okay, if the parents are there more than 4 years or 6 years who had been in the swimming, they are also uh, computing the attention that they have, like what Malaysia is doing. Okay, they are compensating coaches personally, Michael Phelps, Kitajima, in order for them to secure the developments, progressive developments, they are resorting to personalized coaching. Most of the most of the countries now are resorting to personalized coaching
No, and
lately.
and and I and I agree with that, but I think we can do a better job of personalizing the coaching over a larger thread. And what we do by doing that is that we create a larger talent pool, because I think we're throwing away so many kids that aren't getting the attention in those larger groups by not giving them the prescriptions that they need. So one of the things that this program would be great at would be as a like for a national governing body. I mean, where you could then put your swimmers in, create the groups, create the structure, and then have the responsibility and have the reporting for the swimmers that are inside of that group. And it would be a great training tool to keep everybody on board for a national governing body. I definitely see that as something that would increase the amount of personalized attention that each one of the swimmers gets by giving them the opportunity. And then you'll see who really is the cream of the crop, because I'm sure we're losing thousands and thousands of potential Michael Phelps by just letting them be the guys that maybe develop a little bit later in life or whatever. So yes, you should definitely have that personalized attention approach for more than just the 2 or 3 people, in my view.
Oh yeah, which is I talked to the 1994 head coach of China when I was in Singapore, and when he was quite slightly what's this slightly drunk. Okay, he mentioned already that what is planned and ongoing plan for the Singapore, which is north, south, east, west. They have a foreign coach handling a program semi personalized.
Right.
Then on the national games, they're gonna be having war in the swimming pool itself, showing off the best of the best.
Yeah.
So far, that's that he had been successful in doing that in China, north, south, east, west. Yeah.
And it's a correct approach. And the thing again too is how precise are you? Is it recordable? Is it measurable? All the different things that we talk about, when we're dealing with any type of success in any endeavor in life. So if people don't have a roadmap, then they're basically just driving blind. And I think a lot of times when swimmers are training, they're driving blind. Let's just say we have a set of 13 100s. Somebody may be pushing themselves so fast that they're in a higher energy zone where somebody else is going really smooth and just making the interval. But if you have that personalized attention and you're only focused in on the guy that's going really fast, this guy's getting nothing. So you have to really make sure that they all have that prescription. EVA Training Systems asks talent or genetics in terms of choosing the next great swimmer, or should it be both? It's let's be totally honest and real, okay? The elite swimmers are cut from different cloth. They move through the water differently than the rest of us mortal humans. I think that everybody has a potential to be an amazing athlete, and that comes down not to just talent or genetics. It also comes down to training. It comes down to opportunity. It comes down to support. It comes down to nutrition. It comes down to mental preparedness. I mean, you look at the difference between, there was a study in Florida a while back about the difference between the 5 best tennis players in the world and the top 25, and the top 5 would always see a negative situation as a positive. So you can have the greatest genetics in the world, but if you don't have the mental capacity to do it, or if you don't have the training, or if it's not personalized, the genetics are only one of the contributing factors. My experience has been that in order to be at that elite level, where you're a household name, you need a combination of all those things: coaching, nutrition, mental, genetics, all that. But anybody can achieve a higher level. In the United States, I think of it more as a junior national level swimmer, even if you're not as talented, but you do those great things well.
Now, commonly, if there are competitions, which is, for example, 1 week difference. Okay, you competed a week ago, then after a week you're gonna be competing again. Okay, for a tapering, what is you're talking about? You That's a major meet a week ago, and you still gotta compete after a week with another major league. So, uh, how do you handle the mileage within those 7 days of recovery week?
It's a
It's,
great question. And
yeah.
one of the things that you really have to do is when you're at week number 1, is make sure that the athlete is warming down well, and that they're preparing and they're doing the things that they need to do so their body is in the best possible shape that it can be for going up a little bit again and then coming back down. So basically, what I've done in the past when I have that scenario is looking at the week that I'm doing leading into the first week, and making sure that the athlete has totally done their recovery, that they're flushed out, that their warm downs are not 300-400, but they're doing 800 to 1200 in between, so they're absolutely getting flushed. Then coming back up a little bit, feeling them out, and then going through. And again, that's a little bit more personalized, and it's going to depend on whether they're a distance swimmer versus a sprinter. But a lot of the things that comes in is that energy is not just, again, from physiological energy, then can also be from your psychological standpoint. How mentally tough are you? How are you going to prepare for that? What's the race strategy that you're going to do that might be a little bit different? So there's a 360-degree way to look at how you deal with week 1 versus week 2. And the more you swim with an athlete, and the more you know that athlete, the more you're going to be able to personalize that individualized approach to what they do. But from a generic standpoint, warming down incredibly well, taking maybe that Monday to come back, and then looking to see if you're going up Tuesday, Wednesday a little bit, touching those higher energy zones, and then going to the other meet. But it's a tough scenario. And one of the things too that you have to look at with swimming a lot of times is in 3S you can do a cascade. So you can do something where you're front loading 16 weeks or so into more of an aerobic zone to go to a mid-season meet in December, and then the second part of the cascade to your March meet is a little bit more with the higher energy zones. And that's a discussion for another day as well. But a lot of times we want people to qualify for their spring events in December. But then you also have where people are going to conference, and then 2 to 3 weeks later have a national meet as well. So these are all things that you need to consider. And for 1 week, I would make sure that the swimmers are warmed down completely after each one of their events. They're fueled properly. They're mentally tough. They take a day or two to kind of relax a little bit, bring them back up, feel where they are, and then hang on. But they should be in good physiological shape to be able to handle a 14-day spread.
Coach, there's a question.
Sure.
Coach, for sprinter based on your own experience, what's the shortest mesocycle optimal have you experienced, and how did it go?
12 weeks ish really is about the shortest cycle. Okay, three months in a tournament. Okay, perfect. So Eric, when you're, or let me finish with the sprinters. 12 weeks is about it. You can't really, do much less. I mean, you'd be cutting out the aerobic development, probably going straight into the higher energy zones and hoping that the season prior was something that helped them. The thing that I think is important for everybody to realize is that seasons are built on top of each other. And it's not like a season is one encyclopedia. The season is a book inside of an entire library. And in order for you to deal with, well, how's this season going to go? Well, how prepared are you going into the season? What's your level of fitness? What's your capacities in all these different things? So really, it's we can't just look at the tree. We have to look at the forest when it comes to this and a long-term development. But to specifically answer your training question, I would say 12 weeks is about it. It went fine. I think if I had longer, I might be able to develop a little bit more in terms of efficiency and capacity. But when you're dealing with a 19-second race, for say, you can probably get away with 12 weeks. And then Eric, I see. How do you create periodization with 3 months preparation before a tournament? I'm going to share my screen again. Let's see if I'm logged out. All right, so if I'm looking at this right here, I prepare it by going into the season and then starting with where I want to be and here at the end and starting with my current result. And then within this system, it then populates. Now, this is a 13-week season or so. So it's basically within that 3 months. So what you're doing is you're breaking it up into your pull-in phase, your accumulation phase, your realization phase, and your taper phase. And that's the different ones that you're going to deal with. Our athletes, now that they know these, know going in, okay, I'm at the pull-in phase. It's going to be long. It's going to be smooth. It's going to be focused in. As they get into the accumulation phase, they understand the intensity level is going to rise, and realization, they love this. We're doing sprints and getting a lot of rest. So basically, you're breaking it up into these 4 phases over the course of those 3 months and making sure that they have the proper prescriptions in each one of the energy zones so that they're prepared for the next phase. I mean, you can't be here and be effective if you didn't give yourself the opportunity to fill up your gas tanks over here so you can do that. Yeah. Okay, follow up. 12 weeks, 3 times a week or 6 days a week. Forest and trees, what were they doing before? What's the preparation? What is your schedule? How much pool time do you have? What's your dryland schedule like? I mean, there's so many different questions to look at when you're dealing with that. When I'm dealing with higher level athletes, even age groupers, I'm looking at 6 days a week. I offer 4 mornings a week as well. So they're looking at basically 10 workout sessions plus dryland plus mental sessions. So there's a lot to go with it. Again, are you looking at an athlete that is, training for an elite level? Are you looking at an athlete that's developmental? So again, seasons are built upon seasons. If somebody's doing 3 times a week, then maybe you're bumping it up to 4, then 5, then 6, so you can get that opportunity. Then adding mornings, then adding dryland. One of the things that I hope you don't do is just start somebody from 0 and take them to 100 right from the beginning. We have to ramp up athletes' capacities to make sure that their body and their minds are ready for it. And then the other person that you have to deal with is, are mom and dad ready for it? If you create something where, okay, the kids have to be here at a certain time and they can't do it, and the parents do that, you might burn out your parents as well. So one of the things that I do with my group is I have zero minimum requirements. I let the kids come when they're ready to come. And if I ask for 90%, I get 90%. If I teach them why they should come 100%, I'm going to get 110% buy-in. So whether it's 3 days a week or 6 days a week is really a function of what they did prior and what your end goal is. But if you want to give me a specific, I'd be happy to give you any recommendations that I would have.
Talk about the ISCA meets and your
Sure.
experiences there.
Oh my God, I'd love to. I have a relationship with Doug that goes back a bit before it was ISCA, when it was under a different name as well. And I was also one of the first people to do the NCSA meets in Belmont in the early 2000s. And there was a bunch of us that were almost banned from USA Swimming for doing that, our own junior national meet. And I was very, very loyal to that meet for many years. And it was the one that helped to bring USA Juniors back. And then the first year that USA brought the junior national event back, our club won. And so I was forever grateful for that whole NCSA. But the ISCA meet does things that are a little bit different. And our club, our new club, is really focused on ISCA, not NCSA. And the reasons that I love ISCA are the single age group aspect of it. And we're talking about developing swimmers. If we go with the 14 and under meet first, you're looking at 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds, and 13-year-olds that in a traditional sense never get the opportunity to shine because they're developmentally at a disadvantage versus the kids that are in a higher age group. So having the ability to have kids that are at the bottom of their age group, 9, 11, and 13, shine and come back for finals from a coaching standpoint is motivational for them. It's motivational for their parents. It gives them a goal. It gives them something to do. From a senior standpoint, you're looking at 15 or 16 and under as well. And I think 15 and 16-year-old boys are probably the hardest age group for us to maintain because a lot of times they go from this 14 and under age group, rah, everything's great. Now you're 15 going against 23-year-olds. And you might be in heat number 72, lane number irrelevant, and never get a second swim and see where you are. So taking my 15 and 16-year-olds to the ISCA meet allows them the opportunity to get a second swim. And it's funny, I was just showing the swimmer that I had the 200 breaststroke about the difference between people in the prelims that did their personal best time at nationals versus the people that did a best time at finals. And so many times as coaches, we prepare our seasons based on what the athlete did at the end of the season prior. So, for example, that 202 for the breaststroke. Now, he didn't get a second swim, but let's just say that he got a second swim and he went 201. I might be starting my season at a different point. So by taking the kids to the ISCA meet that are 15 and 16 and they get a second swim, it might change the trajectory of where we're going to go next season, because they do have that second swim. So the other thing is it's beautiful. St. Pete was the first pool that I went to when I moved down to Florida in the 80s. And I thought, oh my God, if every pool in Florida looks like this, I've landed in heaven. Of course, they all don't, but it's absolutely a beautiful event. Doug runs a great meet. The awards are awesome. My parents would kill me if we did not go to the ISCA meets at all. They would absolutely revolt. I would lose my position. So yeah, it's a great, if you're thinking about going, absolutely go. The announcing with Duffy is awesome. The music's great. The awards are big and gaudy. Everybody loves it. It's a party. Let me wrap up. If there's no questions, and if there's more, I'll be glad to answer them. Really, what Coach was talking about with the personalized attention leads directly into what I started this out as. And basically it's this science of putting together a seasonal plan. And what we want to do is give every athlete that we're charged to work with an opportunity to be their best, whether their genetics are going to get them to the Olympics or not. In order to do that, we need a system in place. We need a scientific approach. We need to have precise prescriptions for what they need to do at the beginning of the season all the way through the end. We marry that with the 4 different pillars that I have, which is the physiological, psychological, tactical, and technical. We make sure that we fill all those tanks as well, so they're technically proficient, they're mentally strong, they understand how to swim their races. But in this particular case, we're looking at the physiological. This is the one wheel of a car. This is a physiological wheel. We take a look at that. But then as coaches, our job is to do the psychological, the tactical, and the technical as well, so the car can drive in one direction fully. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone. And if anybody has any questions, my personal email is coachrichrogers@gmail.com. I'll put it into the chat really quick. If you have questions offsite, or if you leave and then say, oh, now I have this question. Also, I spoke with Sergey, and he said that he'd give anybody a free trial if they wanted to do this. I'm going to put that link in here as well. You can't get this off of the website if you just want to do that. Honestly, guys, it's, again, I have no financial interest in any of this. This is just me trying to let you know that there's a tool out there, because I've tried it all. I was at the Olympic Training Center in '91, and I'm filling out those little boxes, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week down, macro cycle this, and then I did anything that came across. I've tried, and this is without a doubt the most sophisticated thing. And stay away from generic AI. That's my final thing. Stay away from generic AI.
Thank you so much, Coach. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year, all. Thank you. Happy New Year.
The replay you've been watching is part of a seminar series that's hosted at wafsu.org. The UCSSC, organized by Dennis, is out of the Philippines, and ISCA gives us some technical support as well. Please attend the Saturday morning sessions if you're Eastern USA, or their Saturday nighttime sessions in the Philippines. We have a countdown timer for all of our events, and there are many expert speakers that have been presenting to our audience over the last couple of years. There's some wonderful educational content there. And I'm also encouraging you to check out the podcast called Heavy or Not, the OG Swim Guide. Likewise, ISCA helps with a podcast run by Summer Fink called Lane 1. Check it out. Hopefully, we'll see you at the pool or online again soon.